Susie, do you know how big this storm is supposed to be?
Dave says it's gonna pass, I think he said to the north of us. So not supposed to get that much, and it's sprinkled, but it's not, I don't know if it's raining now.
Hardly. There's a big brush fire in Granby,
Woo,
so I'm hoping it hits Granby good.
yeah, so north of us wouldn't help, maybe, what is Granby east of us? Yeah, must be. South?
It's south,
Yeah.
definitely south. I don't know east or west, but
Yeah,
yeah, it looks like we're almost done with what we're gonna get.
yeah.
Oh well.
We could definitely use some water.
Oh yeah, the grass is all turning brown up here.
Mhm. All right.
Hi, Jim.
Becky, when is the culvert digging going to begin? The National Grid moved the pole or put in a new pole on Friday down by the Locks Pond Road culvert. I was wondering if you had an update.
My update is that it's not settled yet. It
Oh.
might not happen till spring.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because Verizon still has to move their stuff and they needed, yeah. So I'm talking to them quite a bit right now. We're trying to work it
Oh,
through.
We're waiting to be told. Usually, Verizon's usually the one that tells us that our fiber has to be moved as well over to the new pole. Although I don't really think it's necessary for the work to begin, because the whole problem was that the overhead high tension wires, they couldn't bring a crane in, with that kind of interference, so to speak. So there are no more wires. They removed the wires completely. There's no electrical wires running across the culvert at all right now. I was just wondering if you had a more recent update.
I was talking with them today.
Oh, well.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Jim.
How you doing, Susie?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Doing well. A little hot today. A little steamy here.
Mhm.
It did warm up.
Yeah. I guess it's supposed to this time of the year, right?
No rain, though. The thunderstorm went to the south of us, unfortunately.
Oh,
We
that
are
would be good.
very, very dry.
So we're not going to get any of this.
Nope, nothing.
Oh. Bummer.
Unless something happens late tonight, but that seems unlikely.
How you doing, Melody?
Sorry. All good. How about you, Jim? Been a while.
Good, yeah. Yeah.
Susie, you look summery.
Yep. Trying to stay cool.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, that's a quorum.
Yeah, we do have a quorum. We've got 4. I think I haven't heard anything from Bob or AJ or George. So I would expect they'll be here. Maybe just give another minute.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's AJ
AJ.
and there's Bob. And George, okay.
All
I think we're
right.
good to go. We've got everyone.
Mhm.
So call a meeting to order for Finance Committee. Happy summer all.
Hello.
We've got a pretty big agenda tonight. Maybe we just get it up and running here. Do we want to go through the minutes for our last meeting? Does anybody remember our last meeting?
Did we get those minutes? I don't think I
Yes.
have them.
AJ sent them out yesterday.
Oh,
Today,
I think just today, actually.
Oh, today,
Oh,
okay.
okay. I'll go look over there for him.
11:39.
All right, good.
Yeah, so this would have been minutes from the meeting of May 10th.
Huh, 11:39. Today, 11:39, then.
Don't see it?
I don't seem to have it,
Okay.
but
Check your spam folder.
All right.
well, actually, I can see it now in my, yep, I got it. Sorry.
I think I might have just responded to a different email.
Yeah, that's okay. I found it.
Okay, maybe just give Susie, you need a chance to go through them.
Yeah,
Does anybody else, I've gone through them. I don't have any changes myself. Has anyone else had a chance?
It's good with me.
Good with me too.
that's fine.
Okay, so I guess really, Susie, once you get a chance,
Yeah,
To
you
go
go
through.
ahead. That looks good.
okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with them.
Let's go over here.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All right.
Okay, we're all good with the minutes? Or any further discussion?
No.
No, okay, we'll go ahead and vote.
Overnight, aye.
Martyra,
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Closure, aye.
Walton, aye. Okay. Next item we have is officers for Finance Committee. So we've got the chair and secretary. Do we want to start with one of those?
Make a motion, we nominate, I want to nominate AJ for secretary.
I'll second that.
I have a little discussion to go into. That's a lot of work. And I wondered if we could get some other people interested in doing the minutes. AJ's on another committee and he certainly can say that's what he wants to do, but I also want him to consider being chair instead.
Okay, that's a lot of discussion there.
Well,
Well,
What
I
happened?
guess,
Maybe we could, it may be a way to, maybe we should start with chair. We could start with chair, a discussion on chair.
sounds good.
Does that make more sense?
Sure.
Okay,
so I was
Jim,
actually
go ahead.
wondering if there's any, like, if there's any sort of historical protocol that we follow for like rotating these officer positions with each term. Like, is it, what has happened in the past? I feel like Susie and George, you guys have a lot of history with the committee. Do we typically rotate these roles, like based on the terms that members are serving? Or?
Yeah, typically, when somebody's a chair, they're usually a chair till their term ends.
Okay, got it.
That's been my experience. That's what I've seen.
Mhm.
when you say their term,
Well, when they finish being on the finance committee. I mean, that's was the case with me, and that was the case with Eric. Prior to that, I can't remember. But I mean, historically, that's what I think we've seen. Becky, you're on mute.
Becky, you're
I
you
was
trying to
just
say something,
agreeing
Becky?
towards that. We've seen a lot of that, and then we've had rotation annually at different points in time. It's varied given the composition of the committee.
Yeah, I just say it for my, just to your point, George, I've done it 2 years. The first year I did it was the last year of a term. And this past year was the first year of a term.
Well, Jim, what's your capacity? Like, are you prepared to continue on if that's what we end up voting on here? Do you feel comfortable? I mean, you obviously carry, kind of a workload that's greater than the rest of us. Although I know a bunch of you do a lot of additional work for the committee. But yeah, what's your feeling?
Well, I guess there's a couple of feelings. One is I have done it for a couple of years. And I don't think this is the type of role that people should get too comfortable in. I think there's something to be said for rotating it on some regular basis. What that regular means, I'm not sure. And yeah, I'm just seeing, where my situation over this coming year, time capacity and whatnot, there could be some challenges with regard to continuing. Yeah, so those are 3 points I'd make, AJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's very fair.
Okay, there's Susie and then Bob, and then Jim.
I also have been thinking about running meetings and trying to improve. I think once Zoom got introduced into meetings, it changed some stuff. And I'd kind of like to know if the state's got some best practices for Zoom meetings, or if anybody else figured out something. But one thing I see is that the chair could have some roles, such as setting the agenda and posting the meeting. But somebody else on the committee could take the charge of facilitating, which is, figuring out whose turn it is to speak next. And so I wondered if dividing up the work a little bit would make it any more doable.
Is that a question to the committee, Susie?
Yeah, I don't know if other people have been thinking about how to run a meeting. I know, I feel like, Jim, you've had a lot of work in just running the meeting. And so I was wondering how it could be maybe made a little easier. And anyways, you end up not having time to talk. I think the chair, having the person to call on people all the time, takes them out of the meeting, and that does not seem, it takes them significantly out of the meeting, and that does not seem to be the goal.
I think if a person wants to be involved in the meeting, they can be involved in the meeting. I've been a chair in the past and it's never stopped me. Jim, I don't know, do you agree with that?
I hear Susie's point, but I don't personally think it's an issue. I personally don't think it's an issue. I mean, you're right. I do tend to, the way I've been involved, I'd agree with you, Susie, but it doesn't have to be that way. My sense is we get all viewpoints. We get the different sides. We get the different sides of any particular topic. And that to me is important. And I think for the most part, we get there. And without the need for me, I don't feel the need for an objection by the time it comes to me. I think we've covered the different sides of a topic. Yeah, Bob and then Jim.
First of all, that issue, Susie, is kind of secondary to selecting a chair, because whatever chair we have, there'll be some that could be an administrative discussion we could have at that point. But the United States government is run by the oldest man, I think, in the Senate. So maybe we should go with that precedent and appoint Jim Hemingway chair, because he's the oldest and most venerable of our members.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, Jim, I think you had something.
No, I was going to nominate Bob Groves, as a matter of fact, for committee chair. That was going to be my comment. Bob would be a much better choice than I would be.
Susie.
AJ, are you interested? Would you be willing to forget interest?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do chair if you were nominated?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I have a little concern about just the time commitment. That said, if I was chair, I wouldn't be responsible for minutes, which is is, takes whatever, an hour or so to clean up, usually in between meetings. So, yeah, I think I would be comfortable with that. I might feel the need to maybe lean on support of other committee members for certain things where I just feel like there's a lot more sort of institutional knowledge, like for kind of those parts of the role, Jim, like where you've kind of done sort of lengthy presentations on kind of the state of the town. Those things I might be a little reluctant to do those just kind of on my own, just because I feel like I'm still learning a lot about the process and the background. And so, if people were comfortable with sort of doing a little bit, maybe more tag teaming on those kinds of presentations, I think I'd be comfortable.
So I nominate AJ for chair.
I'll second that.
Do we get
I
a
think I
second for
did.
Bob?
Second.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got two motions on the floor, seconded.
I think you have to do one at a time.
One
I
motion
don't
at a
know.
time?
How do you vote for two different people at a time
Yeah,
at the same
The only
time?
thing I would say is that the debate will be the same. I mean, we have two people who are nominated. And so we can just talk amongst ourselves about the two people. I mean, the pros and cons of each, if we can be honest and open, and then vote. And one of them is going to get at least, one of them is going to get a majority vote, I would think, and one won't. And what was the first motion? The
first motion was for Bob.
But it,
The first seconded motion was for AJ.
Well, I had seconded Susie's motion before. Susie made the motion earlier and I seconded.
Yeah, that was my point I was just trying to make.
I don't think
That
it
was the
matters,
first, that
really.
was the first motion that was seconded.
Well, for me, we have two individuals here. We know everybody's position on all the issues. For me, I think AJ is really knowledgeable. And AJ, I think you have a lot more experience than you think you do, and you know a lot more than you think you do. I think Bob knows a lot about what goes on in our town. There's no question about it. Bob's been here for a long, long time and has been involved. I personally, obviously my politics and Bob's, we agree on some things, we don't agree on everything. I also have a very difficult time voting for somebody to be chair who voted really in opposition to a lot of the votes that the committee made in general. It's not a personal statement, Bob. It's not personal, but 5-2 many times. And I feel like because of that history, you weren't necessarily representing or on the same side as the rest of us in terms of your position on issues. So that's why I would personally vote for AJ. I also think that when we hire a chair, a person should be a chair for really 2 or 3 years. I mean, I would have had no objection, Jim, if you had stayed as the chair, but I think it's not a 1-year job. And I think AJ, you've been on the committee. Well, I guess I've been on the committee and Melody the shortest, but I see AJ being on the committee for quite a while. So I think that would be great. I was really impressed by some of the comments he made on town floor and also during the regional school conversations. I thought, AJ, you understood the issues very well, and I thought you represented our town really well. And represented our town, the opinion of a lot of people. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. I think we're since the first, second motion was AJ, I think, well, we can continue the discussion like we have with, like follow George's. Is that, does anybody else have comments regarding both nominees? Bob?
Yeah, I'm going to support AJ for chair because it seems like a foregone conclusion. I respect AJ. I think he'll know how to handle to run a meeting, which is essential. And I think that he qualifies, and it qualifies as a person who is practical. And you know, we don't always agree. I don't always agree with anybody on the committee, I don't think, but I don't think that's the way the committee should function anyways with everybody. It's not a matter of us all being locked in on with the same conventional ideas. But I do think that we should be open, fair-minded. And I think that AJ has those characteristics, and so I'll support it.
Okay, Jim, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I am in favor of nominating Bob, who is maybe among us the one person, or maybe one of many, or hopefully many, who does represent and feels that he should represent the taxpayers of Shutesbury. I don't think we've done a particularly good job at doing that. We've sided with the administration most of the time, and that has led to a tremendous amount of spending. And this is really going to be putting the crunch on Shutesbury taxpayers, especially in the months, weeks, and years to come. So I'm very much in support of Bob, let alone his tremendous knowledge of buildings, because after all, a lot of our work has to do with building maintenance and what to do with them. And Bob is an expert on that, as well as all of the mechanical intricacies of the town garage and vehicles and everything else. I think that knowledge is very, very useful to have as committee chair.
Okay, any other comments? I guess what I would suggest is, since we, the first seconded motion was the second AJ's nomination, is we take a vote on that motion. If that's okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go ahead then.
So for the nomination of AJ, I vote aye. Arvanitis, aye.
Chartier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, nay.
I'm gonna abstain.
Mosier, yes.
Walton, yes. Aye. Okay. Congratulations, AJ.
Thanks.
You no longer have to do minutes.
That's right. So can I make just one suggestion, which is just for this meeting, since I'm like doing minutes, can we like all sort of finish the meetings for today, and you can run the meeting, and then we're starting next meeting, we'll sort of transition in our roles. Does that seem appropriate? Jim, I feel like you also set up the agenda for today, so you probably.
Yeah, I'm okay with that if everyone else is okay with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair to AJ. I'm not sure it's fair for me, but it's fair to AJ. Okay, we have a secretary position that is now open officially. Any thoughts?
That conversation we had earlier about a chair being distracted or unable to participate because of their role, I think that's more the case for the secretary.
Great.
Yeah.
That can be an issue. I can, like, there have been like particular meetings where I've felt like I've needed to make points, and I feel like the minutes suffered in those during those meetings, because I've been spending maybe more time than I usually do contributing to the discussion. But so
Yeah, Becky will tell you, I was the chair of the building committee and the secretary. It was, something has to give, you know, and usually it's the minutes, JJ, you're right, if you're participating in the meeting. You know, so.
yeah, it's like, oh, you've been talking, and then, you know, or engaging with other committee members, and all of a sudden you realize that you haven't like written anything down for the last 5 minutes. So yeah, it's an issue. Yeah.
Okay. Any thoughts regarding a nomination for secretary? Susie,
I would like to nominate Melody to take the minutes because I think
I
taking,
decline.
you are,
I decline, Susie. I decline the nomination.
okay. Taking minutes is another way of learning the nuts and bolts, so that's.
I understand that, but I have a new job and I cannot. I've actually, well, this is an offline conversation, but I cannot commit to being at every single meeting. Every single meeting. And I think you want a secretary that's going to be reliably at every single meeting.
Susie, you don't want to do
Jim,
it?
what do you think? Jim Walton, do you want to be the secretary now?
probably not. Becky,
Mhm.
I know Jim Hemingway does an excellent job at minutes, but he might be overwhelmed. He's the secretary for the MLP. Is that and the broadband committee, Jim, or just? the
Yes,
MLP?
yes, that's for both. And one set of meeting minutes, let alone all of the stuff that's coming up for broadband right now, I would not want to be put in that position. Thank you.
okay, we're down to, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Susie.
I don't like the part where women do things as a matter of course, so I did appreciate that AJ did minutes. But I would take the minutes for this committee.
I'm it's Susie Mosier to take her to be our secretary.
I'll second the motion. Do you want to discuss further? Okay, let's vote. Let's go, George.
Arvanitis, aye.
Chartier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Yes, you guy.
Mosier abstain.
Walton, I. Thank you, Susie.
Thanks, Susie.
Thank you, Susie.
I think the way that discussion went, I'm not going to offer congratulations. I'm going to say thank you. All right.
Usually it's the person who's not here that gets appointed to it, right? But
That's
everybody.
right.
No.
That's usually it.
That's why everyone showed up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
AJ learned early in
That's
capital
right.
planning.
That's how I first got it, yeah.
All right. Okay, we've got that covered. How about year-end fiscal year 22 transfers? Becky, do you want to lead us through what we need to accomplish here on the year-end transfers?
Sure. Does everyone have a copy of the report?
I've got the expense report. Is that what you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
A copy of the expense report. We're going to use that for the transfer
That's
discussion.
what comes before the transfers, right? Doesn't it? Because there's some items that are overspent. Isn't that how it works?
All right, and I apologize, I didn't all right, if we can reverse this, I was given the sheet this afternoon by the accountant. I mean, when I sent it out to you today, and I've had, anyway, so what I didn't write up the traditional transfer sheet. I was hoping to just, what we're doing today, we're not doing any line by lines, which we would do with the select board. Each and every one of the overdrawn, I believe it adds up to about $25,000. I'm proposing that we request from the FinCom reserve, mostly because of the schedule. If you want to do a line by line transfers instead of the FinCom reserve, then we have to schedule this to meet with the select board because that has to be done with the select board.
So you're suggesting that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I want to ask a question about process. If a department head, say, wants to spend something, significantly over what has been budgeted for him, doesn't he have an obligation to come to the finance committee before he spends it? I mean, doesn't that he or she obligated to check with us before they overspend in a significant way their budget?
I think the one situation where that's occurring is the fire chief,
That's what I see. It's right out.
yeah, on the maintenance line.
Yeah.
And that issue, he kept bringing up in various conversations that he would be overspending that line this year.
Really? I don't recall that. I recall was talking about his budget for next year and wanting to increase it $11,000 or more, and that we said we would deal with that next year if there was a shortfall. But I don't know if any other members remember us being aware that there's going to be an overspending of a degree this year. But that's a significant amount of money, both in wages and in maintenance. So I don't know, what's the process supposed to be? That's what the question is. And question to the committee, did anybody else remember being made aware of this? Because I wasn't.
No, I don't remember any reference to maintenance costs. That didn't come up as far as I can remember. I was very surprised by that figure as well. What was it all spent on? What drove the maintenance cost so high? Becky, would you know?
Repairs to the fire trucks and the rescue vehicle. And I think being, as you all, I shouldn't assume everyone's aware. Walter retired on June 30th.
Mhm.
And is no longer an employee of the town. And I believe he went through his vehicles and did all the maintenance he felt was required. And my recollection was that he did make the issue of maintenance an issue. And you're right, it might have been only in reference to next year, but he again repeated the same thing when he said he stopped in and said he was over, he was fixing the vehicles and the overruns. He understood where to come from the finance reserve.
Yeah, I guess I looked at this, when I was going through this, that caught my eye, the operating costs, but then I also saw that we're 8,000 under in other line items with the fire department. So it's
Correct.
basically, if you look at the fire department as a whole, we're at budget. We are hitting the budget for the department. Yeah, George, and then AJ.
Well, to Bob's question, I don't recall Walter telling us that we had any issues with this line in the fiscal 22. In fact, we've been watching our expenses all year long, and this line was never a flagged line.
It
We
was
never even,
at the end.
yeah, we
Agreed.
never really talked about it. In fact, when we had, in one of our final meetings, we were debating whether to increase the maintenance line as he requested for next year. And I think one of the reasons people were deciding that we didn't need to was because it didn't look like this line was going to go over budget in fiscal 22.
Mhm.
As far as your comment on wages, Bob, I wasn't too concerned about wages because the coal wages line, it was actually higher than the overspend on the training wages. So to me, the wages look more like, Walter might have decided to manage the wages differently, or we just have more guys being trained, but I wasn't too concerned about the wages. But the maintenance line, I think, is a real concern, not being informed ahead of time, and the fact that we didn't increase it for fiscal 23.
Yeah, Susie.
So I'm thinking this year is closed. The person in charge is no longer an employee. That what we should do going forward is make a statement that gets out there probably in February or March saying the department needs to notify the FinCom of any estimate that they might exceed their budget, so that we do have some time to reflect it in the designing of the next budget and we get to find out what's going on. So I was surprised. The things that the department didn't spend on, I had understood to be an annual expense that keeps them up with enough Scott packs, et cetera. So the fact that they didn't spend it doesn't sound like they are as prepared for next year as they might be. But I think since this is already gone by, we can have a policy of sending out a notice in February to find out how departments are doing.
Yeah, Bob.
Okay, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, what is the process supposed to be? And to my way of thinking, and correct me if I'm mistaken, they're not, a person, a department head is not supposed to spend way over their budget without coming to us first. I really don't, I think this is awful. It's not like, oh, it's already done. I mean, it was not a, oh yeah, Walter's not an employee, but he did this walking out the door. And I have a feeling he did it to, because he was unhappy about something that happened with our budget process vis-a-vis the maintenance line that he wanted to expand significantly. And I don't like that if that's the case. I'm not saying it is, but I can only guess about this, that this happened. Because after all, the point that he made, the argument that he made was that his maintenance line was where it was going to be because he did all the work and that's what kept it at that level. And then for it to go over the level while he was still there, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems like a petty, but still a significant amount of money, but a petty move on his part to me. But I want to know, what is the process? We should not have this happen, and then say, oh, it's already done. It's a done deal. Let's just fund it. That's not the way budgeting works, right? Am I mistaken?
I agree, Bob.
I think we all agree. And I thought
Yeah.
Susie's suggestion of a policy that gets communicated to all department heads in January or February is a good idea. That says, you need to come to the FinCom if there's an expectation that any of your lines are going to be overspent. by a
George.
significant margin.
In the warrant process, Becky, when the town accountant sees an invoice that's going to put a budget over, it's going to overspend the budget, there's not the accountant has no responsibility to inform anybody upwards.
She reached out to the fire chief who said finance committee said they were going to cover it.
Oh, well.
Well,
Well, we might want to
that
talk to her
sounds-
about that
discussion's-
process.
That discussion sounds like what we talked about for the next budget. For the fiscal year
We
23.
never made a commitment to him. in
We
his
we
meeting.
decided that we would go with the lower level,
Right.
well below what the fire chief proposed.
Right.
And that as a backup, we would go into the reserve if if indeed we ended up somewhere where the chief was suggesting we would end up.
Yeah, Jim.
So that was really more a discussion about fiscal year 23.
Jim, just to expand on what you said, and I agree with you. What we said was if the new chief, which of course there will be now, had a problem with maintenance, he could come to us and we would discuss the issue of augmenting that line. So it wasn't like that he was going to be automatic or anything. It was something we would be willing to look at because we were just acknowledging that that there might be an issue there. So it certainly had nothing to do with 22 at all. It was the potential for something to happen in 23. We didn't know there's a lot of balls in the air with the wages for that person, whether that person would be expected to do the kind of things Walter did or not. All those variables won't be settled until there's a hire. So we put it off and said, we'll look at it. If there's a fair case, we'll address it. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it was George and then there's Susie.
For me, it's the bigger issue. I think the really big issue here is, this is just my opinion, if you got a manager of a department that can go out and commit monies to a vendor, and the vendor does the work, and he's committed more money that's in his budget, at that point, Shutesbury's on the hook. And so what mechanism exists to keep that from happening? Is what I think needs to be discussed. As a member of the personnel board, I think it's a concern.
Susie.
So I feel like we've heard the issues and I suggested a policy and I don't think and I looked back, they weren't over in the previous report. So all of this happened at the end, and it happened in the end of a person who not only retired, but broke his leg. So he could have been not doing it. So I feel like tonight we can move forward by saying, here's our policy.
I just want to
Any
say,
other thoughts?
it's been our policy, as long as I've been on the finance committee, it seemed to me implicit that this is the policy of the town. It's just, this with this is doctrine. You don't do it, go ahead and do this. That's why we have a budget. That's just, for us to announce it's like it's a new policy, I think is a little bit silly, because it really was the policy, and it's always the policy for departments to stay within the confines of their budget. And if they have some emergency or something changes, they come to the finance committee goes to their reserves, et cetera. You don't just spend over your budget. That's doctrine.
So what do you suggest for a solution, Bob?
I think that we should make, before the budgeting process and before we put requests out for people to submit budgets, we should be extremely clear and explicit about that right at the beginning.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that we make
I
it
agree with
clear.
that. I
And we
think it has been our policy all along, my
Right.
point.
Yeah, Melody,
It seems to me that in order for this to be made clear, there should be some consequences for doing something like this. And I don't know why, I mean, could this not be considered a pre-spend on the next fiscal year budget so that it's reduced by that amount?
That's to me. I
You
would
can't carry forward deficits in the budget.
Yeah, the most we can do is cut their budget, but it still comes down to the voters. Of course, when a manager spends more than their budget, they're already end running the voters.
Exactly.
If I make it just a general suggestion here, we don't have a fire chief yet, right, Becky?
Correct.
Okay, so when we do get a new fire chief, maybe we'll have the opportunity to discuss this with that person about the implications for this money spent on maintenance for the coming fiscal year. Is that, there's so many variables in this situation that's going to come forward with the person that is hired and their level of competence in terms of maintenance and all the rest of it. So that maybe we could have a discussion about this issue and meet with the fire chief about their budget, and maybe something could be done about this money that was spent preemptively, if you will, for maintenance at the end of this fiscal year. So I don't know what other way we could address this, because he's, as you say, he cannot be fired. He cannot be penalized. So it's too bad. It's not a good move on his part, but I don't know what we can do about that.
AJ,
Just one quick point. I just want to say, I don't think I'd be in favor of us creating a policy, even if it were possible, of sort of automatically drawing down on a department's future budget if they overspend. Because I think that sort of precludes the possibility that there are sort of legitimate reasons why this may happen in a given year. And I think the point is that the department heads should understand that they're obligated to speak and just communicate with the finance department and explain in advance of the expenditure, or if it's an emergency, as soon as possible after the expense, just kind of giving us the information and the explanation for why that line is being overspent. But like to have a policy where it sort of like automatically triggers a reduction or a drawdown from a future budget year, that might just be a little too I think restrictive.
Jim, and then Melody.
Do we have any idea what this $7,500 was spent on by Walter? Becky, would you know?
They
Where all
were
this money
parts-
suddenly,
I'm sorry.
what? I was just wondering where this money went, how it was
It
spent.
went to parts and for repairs to trucks, their brush. It turned out that they learned their brush, whatever the equipment is that they had used for brush fires was supposed to be changed every 10 years, and they had never changed it in 28 years, so they replaced that. I think Walter went through and just tried to make sure his equipment was up and running. I know they did some mechanical work on the rescue vehicle.
Okay.
Excuse me. So
All right.
he just tried to go through the equipment and make sure things were addressed, and that he had gotten things that were way out of date for the new person starting.
Yeah, Melody, and then I think George.
Well, I wasn't, I just want to address what was raised earlier, that I don't think that, I understand that there's emergencies that come up and things can be unforeseen. What isn't unforeseen is the decision as to whether or not you're going to inform the finance committee. I mean, that's a personal decision. Everybody has their own efficacy, and they can or cannot, or they can or they won't inform the finance committee. So to me, there ought to be consequences. I'm not suggesting we codify this into a policy, but I think that the finance committee should have the ability and the flexibility to, on a case-by-case basis, especially this is an extenuating circumstance because this person is no longer an employee, no longer in charge of this. So this isn't something that's going to happen all the time. So I do think that, on a case-by-case basis, finance committee should have the ability to lower a budget as a consequence for the overspending. I mean, if there's no consequences, then what's to stop anybody from doing something like this in the future? And I'm not saying this in a vindictive way. I'm just saying, it just seems logical to me. You may disagree.
George, and then Susie.
Well, before I bring up my point, I would just say to Melody, to your point, we always have that ability to do that. So if, we see that happening and we see it before annual town meeting, somebody on this committee can make a motion to decrease that line. So to some extent we have that. It's not automatic policy, but we are in a position that we could do that. So just something to be considered. But I'm just going to go back and say what I said earlier a little differently. The root cause is, I believe the policy should be that a manager cannot give the green light to a vendor for a good or a service that's going to put us over budget until they've got the green light from somebody that is funded. Because they were given $11,000 to fund maintenance, and they went out and engaged for $18,000 vendors to provide goods and services. Nobody ever said they could spend the other $7,000. To me, in this situation, Walter, if a good policy would have been, Walter would have had to come to somebody, I think the finance committee, and say, I need $7,000 from your FinCom reserve. Here's why. The voters gave you 11,000. You decided to spend 18. We're the oversight committee. And I think that's what should be in play. I don't think anybody should commit town funds beyond their budget.
I agree completely.
I agree.
Seems totally reasonable. Yeah.
Susie,
Well,
or
and
Becky, do you want to respond to that? And then Susie, or?
Okay, that's fine.
I was just going to say that the accountant alerts me, and on the things that, that was the last day. He hadn't been in the office for a month and a half. And yeah, there, at that point it was, like you said, too late in the process. We haven't had Walter ever do that before. He's been the most meticulous on his accounting for his department and their expenses, and we don't have any other history of any other overruns. So to expect it to happen was not foreseeable. And as far as common practice, the accountant does alert me to things that are an issue, and some can be dealt with and some can't. Like overruns in snow and ice, they are not, those happen and we can't control them because it's a result of emergency to the most extent. But the other, everything else was either smaller, or like in the case of the assessor, when he was out sick with severe medical issues, and we now have a clerk that went over her budget for the first time, and he was not aware of it till the end of the year, so he had no ability to reduce her hours in the coming months. He has instituted a regular sheet, so there's a cumulative run all the time of her wages at this point, so that won't happen again. And that's the response we've had for most situations. So you're not talking about a group of department heads who flagrantly overspend their accounts. And there are procedures in place to watch over them. And then we have this, the oddity with the fire chief in his last hours as in the building, wanting to make sure he leaves things in better order for the person coming in. And yes, he did run a deficit. There's no excuse for that. But I'm just letting you know there are procedures in place, and these kind of things, anybody who's been on the finance committee for a long time knows very, are oddities. They are not the way our department heads do their business.
Okay, Susie and then Bob.
And I don't, I think if the FinCom decided that they would reduce the next year's budget, that would take a town meeting vote because the town voted for that budget.
Bob,
I just want to say, Becky, just in terms of how we operate this process and what we might see in the future, I just wanted to ask if the accountant questioned Walter about these payments because she knew they were out of budget, and then she talked to you. When was that? The last day of the year, or did you have time to talk to us? about
It was a couple, I think it was just before she closed the last. Yeah.
Because it seems to me that if the accountant was aware of this, that's good. And if she raised the issue with you, that's good. But what was missing was any contact with us, because that's the way we could address this in future if we were made aware of it, if something like this comes up. If he
And the
did this
time-
literally on his way out the door, there was nothing could be done. But I'm just thinking that's one way we could organize the process so that we can, avoid this happening again. But, before she cuts the check, basically. But again, as George pointed out, if he hired the vendor and the vendor did the work in good faith, it kind of puts us in a pickle because we are obligated to pay the vendor. So we have to trust the manager to do the right thing, to be ethical, to be responsible. And but that didn't happen in this case, that's all.
Susie?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I feel like we've discussed this and we're aware. So I'd like to make a motion that we transfer money out of the FinCom reserve to cover the overdrafts in the FY '22 budget.
Becky, do you have an exact number, what that is?
Yes, I'm sorry, for this line item, you're asking?
No,
George?
for the total transfer out of the FinCom, what would that be?
I
to
will have it
cover all
for you in
those?
about 4 minutes.
Yeah,
don't have it quite yet. Oh, you mean the figure for the FinCom reserve? That's
Yeah, well,
39,000.
Yeah, we have plenty of money.
Yeah,
Just-
Sorry,
it's
say-
understand that, I just-
39,384.
No, I know that. I can see that. No, my question is, what will the amount of this transfer be and what will the leftover final FinCom? reserve
It'll be about $14,000,
14,000 total?
around 14,000 left over.
Oh, 14,000 of the reserve is left over.
Will be
Right, I
unspent.
believe that total and, well, 2172.
Maybe we can
It's
give her
close enough.
time.
If you give me 2 more minutes, I can tell you.
Yeah, I guess
exactly.
I wouldn't be comfortable until we had the total list and had it, at least what line items are involved with all of this? With all of this request, not just the one fire department maintenance line, but all of the lines that are going to
Okay, I
contribute to
can
this
give that to
request.
you in about 2 minutes.
Okay,
So we have 39,384 in FinCom reserve right now. That should be enough to cover most of this, if not all of it, right?
Yes.
More than enough, yes.
More than enough, yeah.
But I think to Jim's point, I'd like to understand for each line, just have a brief discussion about each line, right, Bob?
Yeah,
Exactly, we want to see what we're paying for.
Yeah,
We want to see if it's.
Why did it go over? I mean, we set budgets for next year. If there's something we need to know about, I just
I
want to
think
be
we have
aware.
to have a
Yeah.
list. We have to look at the list and evaluate and look at it line by line. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, historically, we always make this transfer and we never say no, but we still should be knowledgeable about how we got here.
yeah.
Okay, I just want, while Becky's doing her, I guess her 2 minutes. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page as far as who the secretary is. Does it continue to be AJ for this meeting?
Yeah, I'm taking notes. Yeah,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
yeah.
Susie, comment now?
I'm wondering if we could go on to our next item, which is the regional school guardrail concept, and let Becky tune out and get the numbers that people are looking for. Because people want a list as well as a bottom line.
Yes. Yeah, okay, is everybody good with that? Or any? Yeah, okay, let's do that. We can do the, so I think most of us probably received an email from Mike Morris, and if not from Mike Morris directly, from Becky, describing what Mike is looking for this committee, of which we from the Finance Committee have the opportunity to have one representative on this. I think he's looking for roughly 2 months over the course of the summer. Of which the Finance Committee would be one of 3 members from Shutesbury, representing Shutesbury. And I'm guessing the other towns would have a similar contingent for this, for what Mike is proposing. Like I said, I think all of us should have this message from Mike Morris, detailing what he's looking to accomplish with this guardrail concept. So maybe we can talk about who from the Finance Committee wishes to represent us on this cause.
So Jim, I'm looking at the email and it says, please let us know if you have a few, no more than 3 per town. So I'm assuming, Becky, that there's going to be a representative from the select board and school committee. Is that the idea?
I have
So-
reached out to the school committee. Dan Hayes has stepped forward depending on the schedule. The select board, if the evenings are in the evening, I believe Melissa Makepeace will attend. And now I'm reaching out to the Finance Committee for a potential.
Okay, so you've already got 2 representatives for Shutesbury. Becky.
Potentially, yeah.
All right, so we're looking for one more from the Finance Committee.
Yeah.
We don't know what the schedule is, do we?
The Steve Sullivan is expecting it to be in the evenings, given the group of other people that are going to be involved.
Any idea, Becky, what number of meetings might be required to go through this, or?
I would say 3 to, hopefully 3 would be plenty, but I would have to say 3 to 5, just
With the
because.
region, you just don't know. With the
No.
with the 4 towns, you just don't know how it's gonna go.
But this is isolated to the guardrail. Hopefully. If it's isolated to the guardrail, I think it's, but I'm sure the other, everybody's opinion about everything else will come out. But it is critical.
Susie and then George?
I think that we saw a generally positive attitude, and we at least temporarily used a method of guardrails this time. So I believe it could move along in a positive way.
So Becky, I think that's true, Susie. I think that's true. But one of the conversations at the region has been writing the regional agreement. Writing in, I think one of the long-term goals is to write in the new method into the regional agreement, which means this guardrail portion is an important part of it. Is that a correct read? I mean, Amherst, I've heard Amherst say that, first they always like to stick to the regional agreement, but there's been conversation about updating. I think one of the members of the council said we need to modify the regional agreement to reflect this new method, which means the guardrail will be a big part of that. And given that the finality of that, I think that it might be a little more, I won't say, it might require a little more analysis and effort by that committee. I would
They
love,
wouldn't be rewriting the agreement, right? They would just be doing the guardrail part that's part of the agreement.
yes, but when you're talking about the assessment method and you start talking about the guardrail, conversations are going to come up. Perspectives are going to show up. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too cautious.
No.
I should be optimistic like Susie.
Mhm.
I don't think you're being too cautious because from my interpretation, what we originally proposed, which was the statutory with the 5-year rolling average, is kind of a guardrail built into it. It does soften the changes that might occur due to enrollment year to year. But the guardrail print, that method does not, you don't lose any benefit from your position vis-a-vis the statutory. It just softens the transition in your assessment on a year-to-year basis. Doesn't make for any rapid and sudden changes, but you never lose the credit for your circumstances in any given year. They just get averaged in. The guardrail, on the other hand, is a very different concept that might permanently kind of deprive you of the benefits of the statutory method. That's the way that I see it being employed this year. And I think that it's a complicated concept to actually execute. And I think it's going to be probably more complicated and possibly more divisive than we think. Because I mean, really, what's wrong with the guardrail of the 5-year rolling average? I mean, if we just want to soften the transitions, I don't see it. This year, yes, I could see why it was supported because it was a more sudden shift. But look, Pelham really benefited from that permanently. They benefited permanently. They got a subsidy that they were happy to get, but it was at our expense. So I don't know. I think that it might be more complicated than what we might hope, this guardrail concept.
But maybe a suggestion here is we're trying to address and solve and or get a solution to the guardrail concept. Whereas here what we're looking for here is a representative from our team to participate in this effort. Susie, and then Becky.
And I want to note that there's members of the finance committee that have been doing some extra work. The fire chief,
You're live on
the
finance.
negotiation for the
Live on
police
the finance.
gallery,
Sorry.
and I don't know what else. So I think it's important that people who haven't done those things could be thinking about participating in this short committee work.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Becky. Go ahead, Becky.
I was just gonna make a comment. I appreciate the conversation about it because it helps whoever does volunteer have a sense of what people's thoughts are on the issue. So I appreciate that.
Well,
I
then,
don't know if anybody else would be willing to do it, but I would be willing to go if the committee wanted me to go. If George wants to go or someone else, then I would defer to them. But I would do it if the committee wants me to go.
Okay, George and then AJ.
yeah, I have no objection, Bob, if you'd like to go. I think whoever goes is needs to report back to us what the conversations are. And before committing our town, I assume there's going to be a process where finance committee and select board are going to, vote to agree or disagree. I did want to make one comment. Becky just said it's good that we're having this conversation. The guardrail is there not to penalize the town. It's there to protect the town. And yeah, it protected Pelham. And someday it may protect us. So, we got to kind of look at it on both sides of the coin. One of the good things is I wanted to let everybody know, I did talk to Doug Slaughter at annual town meeting. about this subject. And, he's gonna take the new method and calculate everybody's assessment going back many years. Because he's got that, every year they give us the chart, they show us the 5-year rolling 100% statutory method. So he's got that. And so he's going to take that. And when you're talking about different percentages, he's going to be able to apply them to the models to see at what instances, which towns in which years actually would have had that happen and what would have been the consequence of that. So I asked him to do that. I said, you've got that data. He's like, oh yeah, absolutely. So you can do that, right? And he's like, oh yeah. And I think he was thinking it anyways. And I just want to tell you, when I was on one of the regional assessment committees, we actually looked at a guardrail method, and we had, at that time, with Sean Magano, put together schedules. He was the finance director at the region at the time, and he did the same thing. He looked at the different methods we were talking about, and he did the calculations on a 4%, I think some other percentages. It didn't happen very often. It happened rarely that any one town was in a situation where their assessment would change that much. Especially, Bob, as you point out, under this method, it's so much smoother in terms of changes and volatility that it's just not likely to happen very often, especially at a 4 or 5% rate, maybe at a 2 or 3%. And then the final thing, just thinking about this, remember, year after year, the assessment conversation turns to Amherst, and Amherst always is the one that gives us all the percentage that they're willing to pay. So, that's always the elephant in the room, just to keep that in mind, Bob, when you're negotiating and talking.
AJ.
I know you know this.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to agree with what George said there. I think I see the guardrails ultimately was a political strategy that helped us accomplish this important shift last year. And I see it as being a pretty rare occurrence moving forward. And I think the only reason it came into play last year was because we made a very dramatic shift from a 65% modified statutory to 100%. And where, in previous years, we were taking sort of smaller incremental steps. And I was doing just a little playing around with numbers today. And, if the assessment was the same next year, which I'm sure it's not going to be, it's going to be increased by 1% or 2%, one would imagine. But if it were to be the same, and all of the factors that determined each town's allocation remained the same, the largest change that any one town would have experienced would have been Shutesbury, whose assessment would have gone down by 2.25%. So I just don't think it's going to be something that comes up much at all. And it clearly helped accomplish a change. So I think we should be kind of supportive of the idea, because I just ultimately don't think it's going to be an important factor for us. And what is important is that we stay at this 100% modified statutory. So if the guardrails continues to help us kind of politically accomplish that, then I'm totally okay with it. Other thing I just wanted to say quickly, I wanted to ask George, you have a lot of history with the earlier kind of iterations of these working groups and committees. And, there's a lot to be said for that historical knowledge that you have. And so I was kind of coming into this meeting hoping that you might volunteer for that role, but I don't know if you were thinking about being involved.
I just want to share that maybe if you both volunteered, I know the other two committees weren't that excited about going. So I'm sure they would acquiesce to 2 members from the finance committee if that was what you came forward with.
I wouldn't mind doing it. I have no objection to doing it other than my schedule. I'm going to be away a few times this summer for 8 days and then again for another 8 days in August. So, there's some dates won't fit my schedule, but I don't mind going. I'd rather not.
Well, then Bob will do a great job and we'll be in good shape.
Yep.
If I want to.
Bob, AJ's hand was up, but Bob, have you responded to this
Just
discussion?
gonna say we could play tag team, George, if you wanted to do it, approach it that way.
Yeah, I don't know if. Send me the agenda and the schedules and I guess I can do it. I'm happy to help and there's no question I have some knowledge with this and I've also got some experience dealing with the other towns. I think the characters are different in the other towns, though. I know Leverett's had a complete changeover. I don't know if Andy Steinberg is still going to be there and Pelham has changed a lot.
Andy's still going to be there.
Andy's going to be there. Well, then, yeah, and I assume, oh, I can't believe I can't think of the chair's name in Pelham. Oh, my God.
Tricky.
Tricky.
Yeah,
John.
I assume John's going to be there. And, I work with John on these. I have no problem working with John. He's a great guy. I like him. So.
I mean, if you're willing, George, I feel like the FinCom of all three committees is clearly the group that spent the most time processing this issue. And so I think it'd be great if we had two members involved.
All right, yeah, you tell Melissa or whoever the other one is. Well, tell Melissa, I'd be willing to do it.
Okay.
I'm sure Bob would do a great job. It's not,
Yeah.
But the two of us together, Bob, I think we'll get it right.
Okay, Bob and George, are you okay with co-representing? You're on mute, Bob.
Yeah, Bob
Okay.
said he would. He said it
Okay.
earlier.
All right.
Great.
Is anybody from the committee, any concerns, issues, other comments? So we go, good. We're good to go then. We've got Bob and George will represent us on this project this summer. Thanks. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, George. Okay, Becky, are you good to go on this?
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
I'm gonna make it a little bigger. Okay, so we've already, I don't know if you want to talk about the maintenance again, but that was already talked about. Whoops, that doesn't work. So starting from the first page of the budget, now the select board expenses, we had, it became a catch-all for for a number of things at the end of the year. I was not aware that we had gone over to the very last warrant. I could have spread some of those expenses into my account. But not a lot. So part of the issue is wanting to be sure to acknowledge where we've gone over, so we have that knowledge going forward. And, but these were, oh, I know what it was. This is the tent. This is the town meeting tent that I just got ARPA approval for. Well, I almost got ARPA approval for at the last select board meeting, and then they decided not to vote until the upcoming meeting. So $1,600 for this one is going to be transferred out of the select board expenses. So this will not be overrun once ARPA funds are applied. Apologies for that one. But I didn't,
So you're going to
it's
take
not
that?
confirmed yet, so I had to put it on the list.
So we'll probably be voting on transfers $1,009 less than what we have listed here.
Well, we have to vote tonight is the problem.
We have to vote on that item, even if,
It's your choice. If
It
you-
just won't happen if the select board approves the ARPA funding.
Yeah,
And then
And-
FinCom reserve would be $1,000 higher.
So $1,000 more in free cash.
Yeah, Bob,
Just want to ask a question on another line on the highway wages, just for clarification.
yeah, maybe, yeah, just process check here.
We're reviewing these items, right, Jim?
Yeah, but are we gonna go why don't we go down the list and cover all of them?
Okay, I just
Yeah.
was looking at the whole list and was pulling one out.
Yeah, because I think we talked about the fire department earlier because we didn't have the list. And now we have the list and it looks like Becky's starting from the top.
Okay,
And we
Okay,
already
so we'll
talked
get
about
to-
assessor clerk,
I'm sorry?
and she already talked about assessor clerk. Second item.
Yeah. Right. So we want to go down to item 3, Becky?
Is everyone ready for item 3 or have questions about 1 or 2? Sorry, Bob, your function is still up, so
Oh,
I didn't know
sorry.
if you had a question.
I will lower it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so item, which is listed as item 4, the fuel and electricity rates spiked this year. And that was our problem for both of these. I have to get to the bottom of what else might be going on there, but it was the increased rates that drove us, and we've been seeing that starting to occur, the heating especially earlier in the year. So I think the committee was aware of that. Am I right? Or
Yes, I remember that.
okay.
Yeah, I think for me, the concern is going to be the fiscal 23 budget.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, that's
do need
what
to
I
get to
was
the
just-
bottom of that.
Yeah, that was my concern. We have a budget right now that's probably reflective of what we expected to end up in fiscal year 22. So we're gonna probably have that same dynamic going on in 23, this higher fuel costs. So we're gonna probably, based on what you just described, Becky, we will probably see these items showing up above budget in 23.
Well, that's definitely going to be true for the fuel line,
Yeah,
which did not go over this year, fortunately. The electric, I thought you made an adjustment to electricity.
We
went
increased
up
electricity
$1,000.
1,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did, but we didn't increase heating, which is going to be driven by the fuel prices, right, Becky?
yeah.
We rebalanced those two lines because we had put the heat pumps in town hall. But there's another factor involved in heat pumps, which are more efficient in some ways. They have AC built in, and when you didn't have heat pumps, nobody was using AC, or at least not to the same degree. So it's a different configuration. Is going to be more expensive electricity, more expensive oil. And we had rebalanced it, trying to address the fact that we had different heating and cooling, or at least heating. More of the load is being taken by the heat pumps now. So it was rebalanced, but I don't think we anticipated the cost of electric rates and oil, heating, fuel oil. Fuel oil's gone up, what, 100% more?
Yeah.
Of course, if you compare fuel oil to last year, yeah, it's doubled, but if you got to compare fuel oil to 2 years ago before the, pandemic started, because it also dipped.
Didn't we have a contract for fuel oil though, Becky?
No, we didn't this year because in the prior year, we made out much better in 2 prior years, but prices are starting to go down again a little bit, 50 cents.
Went
So
down,
hopefully before heating system, they'll be able to get them down.
a barrel of
But
oil
if they-
went down by a lot today.
Yeah, and if we go back just a couple of years, in FY 22, I'm sorry, the heating and fuel was 21,000, and we had dropped it from FY 21 where it was 24,000. So in our first attempt, if we had kept it the same, we would have covered most of the overage. but we reduced it, and now we've got to focus in and try to bring usage down.
George,
Um, electricity, is there an opportunity for the town of Shutesbury to produce more electricity through solar in the future? Or is there any conversation about that with the fuel, with electricity prices going up? I'm wondering if we can, if the energy
The
committee is
new
considering it.
energy committee is making that one of their talking points.
Good, thank you.
Should be. Just a small point, I have a rooftop solar in my house, and I produce my own electricity, or at least enough to provide all that I need, that we need. And I'm getting bigger smart checks now that the price of electricity has gone up. So it's actually, I'm one of those big utility companies that is benefiting from this.
mhm.
Okay, we're gonna classify you with cable companies.
I was talking to Graham Sefton about that, and he said 30 acres of solar panels would provide enough power to provide for all the households in Shutesbury.
Wow.
Okay, so we're looking at items, a third and fourth item here. Are there additional questions? Susie, you have a question or
Yeah,
comment?
I would just say that we have a budget approved for next year, and we may end up having to use some FinCom money for it. And as this unfolds in an unstable market, we might find that we do want to add more for the FY24 proposal. But right now, we'll enter next year with what we got.
Yeah, we that's what we've got approved as a budget, is what we've got. But I think for us, it's incumbent on us to just keep an eye on this. There's a couple other areas, right? The road department that will be impacted by this to some extent, maybe the police. So it's just something for us to we're all gonna need to keep an eye on this to see what the impact will be on our budget. This higher energy costs. It did go down today, George, but it's still relatively high. It's very high.
Yeah, it
compared
came
to-
under $100 a barrel today.
Yeah. And yeah, that's still a big number.
Yeah.
Compared to where we've been
Yes.
for the last few years. Okay, any other comments on those third and fourth items? Becky, you want to bring us bring us through the town report?
Sure, the town report was covered in the last 2 years through CARES money. And we had to make changes to the town report to make it digital, and then it's available online, but we also could not do the folding parties as we had done in the past. So it's been sent out by a mailing house, which is pretty affordable, but as you can see, we do have an overage when the CARES funds aren't there to help with it. I did not take this one to the select board for ARPA funding. I was thinking that we were going to be able to offset it with the shortfall. I mean, the $968 in the newsletter, and I apologize. I'm not sure why that didn't happen. It seems reasonable to do that, but it did not happen. Probably because I told her I wanted the finance committee to know we had a shortfall because in this area, and I don't like, that's the best way for you to know. And if we just keep moving things that could be moved because they're the same characteristic. She might have been a stickler on this one, though, that the newsletter couldn't be used for the town report. But that's why I didn't get to you earlier, is because that's what I thought would happen.
Okay, any questions, comments on this item, the town report item?
So
Okay,
it sounds like in the future, we might want to raise how much is appropriated for that line. I can't find it in this, our proposed budget, but I don't remember raising it. So I would say it might be a shortfall next year, and then we can fix that in the future.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to figure out if we can use the town newsletter fund in FY '23 to cover it, so we don't see a shortfall or not.
Okay, what do you get at fire department, training salaries?
All right, as George pointed out earlier, yes, he's gone over in the training, which I've been working hard with him to make sure doesn't happen. But I think they did end up going to a number of trainings at the end of the year, and it ended up over, but the response wages line is underspent by a similar amount that would cover that. But I don't think we want to combine the lines, because you could have just one fire department salary line, but we wouldn't be aware of the dynamics and the usage. What are your thoughts on that?
Thoughts on combining versus keeping them separate as is?
Yeah.
Okay. I tend to agree that we get more granularity by having them separate.
Yeah, I
Any
agree.
other thoughts, Bob?
I just want to say, I think that when Walter presents his budget, whoever comes forward, they're very, very different items. The call response is literally when they were out working and training line is something that is entirely different in concept. And we've always been told that we never use the training money completely. So it's a little bit of a surprise that it was overspent, but I don't know what the circumstances were, but I don't support the idea that we should combine those lines in the future.
Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Okay, we want to move down to the Amherst Pelham debt, $304.
That has to be my error of not getting their very final, debt calculation. I did manage to catch a small change this year that happened close to the, right around the time the budget was being finalized. But I did not catch the 304 change in the prior year in the debt.
Okay. Any comments, questions, concerns? Okay, Bob, thanks for the patience. For highway wages.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Becky for clarification from me. The snow removal line, which is below this, does that include labor or is that just materials?
That there are two snow removal lines, and the one that was over is the expense line, so it's the materials.
Okay.
They were over, they still had money left. Let's see how much.
5,900.
Yeah, they had almost 6,000 left in their snow removal wages line.
Okay, the reason I asked that was just, so now I know that the line here that we're looking at, highway wages, represents ordinary highway department payroll. And it seems like a significant amount to overspend it without coming to us. But I don't know, maybe there's special circumstances, but we were never, as far as I know, made aware of those special circumstances. It seems like a significant amount of dough.
I think this is the result of, in July of last year, remember in the prior year, we had the part-time person who was working 30 hours a week, and he carried on to the first couple of months in the summer, July and August, and that's where the overage is from.
That big
And then
guy
we
that was here?
discontinued that. I'm sorry.
That big guy?
Yeah. And then his work in the department ended, except for intermittent snow removal work. So we'll only be seeing him again for snow removal.
Okay. Right, so, fine, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Highway wages. And Becky, you started to get into the snow removal expenses.
Yes, the snow removal expenses did go over, but we were fortunate. The salt and dirt was heavily used for the freezing rain on the dirt roads. And I believe that's why the materials were overused, because not only for snow, but we have to, on the dirt roads, we end up using a lot of materials in the freezing rain conditions.
Yeah, I think I recall this as being a topic in prior meetings. I think we have raised this in prior meetings, this particular
Yes.
And
topic.
compared to other towns, when you look at it, and with the wages being over 6,000 and this being -2, our total snow removal wages was very close to, was under actually by $4,000, which for this past any winter is a good thing, to stay within those costs. And they encourage you not to increase or decrease your snow removal lines, because they're used, if you change them and then you have an emergency, they use it against you in the state calculation for emergency aid.
Okay, I don't see anybody with questions here or raising their hands. I don't see any hand raising. County Health District, $77.
I used the percentage they gave me. That's more than a rounding error. So I'll make sure that they give it to me in writing next time and not just a percentage change.
And I noticed the salary for the county health agent didn't get spent. Is that going to get spent later?
I'll have to follow up with Ryan on that.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to get spent later.
Okay, retirement, $1,283.
That was also that was a number I count on Irving 28 finance director for, and I used the number and I even rounded it up a bit last year. Yeah, that was still when Bruce was here, and I came up short. So I'm hoping this year's new finance director can give me an accurate number. I don't know why they have difficulty with it, but that's the tough part, is getting the number from them. We get the bulk of the information from the county retirement folks, and then the finance director has to split out the difference. And
Should we be concerned about the 23 budget, where we have in place for this year?
Well, I'm hoping
current-
she has a solid method. It's,
Yeah.
I believe I added $1,000 to the number she gave me just in case. But I didn't want to add too much, but it didn't increase.
Looks like we upped it 13,000, or am I mixing?
But yeah, the increase she gave me was pretty solid, and I think I added another 1,000 because I've been under about 3 years
Okay.
since Bruce started. Yeah, and it does increase every year quite a bit.
Yeah, we increased it to 250 from 237.
Okay,
Okay,
our number of retirees keeps expanding.
okay, I don't see any hands up. Are we good to go on to the last one, Medicare?
I'm not, I will have to follow up on that one. I'm not sure how, that's
Well-
quite a bit for Medicare.
But-
Seems-
So Medicare is calculated as a percentage of salaries. So either we didn't have the right number budgeted based on the salaries we budgeted for, or we had overages in salary lines, which is going to result in overages in Medicare. Just as a general concept, that's how it, everybody I think is familiar that the Medicare the town pays is based on a percentage of each person's paycheck.
Right.
So that's just an
and-
indicator we didn't budget enough.
And I did go up, from last year, I went up 4.37%. Oh, I know why, because the year before, the actual came in a lot lower. And I don't know why it came, but it's been bouncing.
But for budgeting, if we just took the total of the salary lines and applied the percentage, Medicare, what is it these days? I don't even know, 1.45, then we just budget for that.
Yeah, but I think because you've got stuff like the training, you don't know exactly how many, what the final salary
Yeah,
line.
no, it's a good point.
And then you have transition at,
Well, that's why I would just use the budget, whatever we budget those at, just make your Medicare number a percentage of those. You can
Yeah.
round it up a little if you want. But it's not in anybody's control. And it's not because somebody made a decision like we talked about earlier to spend money that wasn't in their budget.
right.
Ryan has no choice. This is what we have to pay as we pay our employees.
And I'll work more closely with him to try to, we've never been under on it. So it's tough when you're trying to tighten things, you take the risk of being under.
Bob,
Yeah, I just want to be, for clarity for me, this line is for Medicare tax, payroll tax, not Part B. It's not part of the insurance line.
Correct. It's
We also
just
pay Part B
the
Medicare. That's
payroll.
not this line.
Right. This is just the Medicare. That's the tax on wages,
Okay.
The employer portion of the employees.
the employer portion. We don't have Social Security tax. Our retirement is separate. I mean, not retirement. Yeah, there's a different.
Social Security is
withholding.
retirement. Yeah, but we have the state contribution plan. The state retirement plan in place of the Social Security.
Right, the FERCog for town employees. I'm sorry, not FERCog, but the Franklin County Retirement System is a system that covers the equivalent of Social Security. Except they take out more money from the employee.
okay. I don't see any other hands. We've got just over $26,000 of transfers that are here on the table. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Well, can I ask one question first, Jim?
Go ahead, George.
I was just gonna ask Becky, so we're voting on these transfers, does that mean the expense schedule you sent us today, is that the final, you called it final, is that the final, or are there still bills being processed?
There will still be bills processed into August. As you can see from this report, there's still a $118,000 balance at the elementary school. But the accountant will continue to take open bills that are dated June 30th or earlier. But we don't anticipate any, if there's no more money left in a line, then it can't change anymore. So any of the lines that are being transferred to cannot take any more expenses.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion regarding transfers?
Tim, I think Susie had made a motion before we paused the discussion.
Okay.
So I was gonna just kind of slightly change the wording a little bit, Susie, if that's okay.
Sounds
So
good.
how about this? Susie Mosier makes a motion that the town transfer $26,181.68 from FinCom reserves to reconcile 13 budget lines that were overspent for FY '22.
That's good.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Okay, if we could vote.
Arvinetis, aye.
Chartier, aye.
Moves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, I. Well, we're still in the expense report category, and I think, George, you alluded to this a little bit. This last report shows about $623,000 that we're running under budget for the fiscal year 22. Susie, or I'm sorry, Becky, you mentioned earlier that on the education line, there could be a significant bill that's still out there. There might be some other bills. Do you have any sense right now where we may end up with regard to a balance?
Well, I also anticipate that we have not received the bill, or it has not been processed for elementary school transportation of 84,000. So, you know, that's $205,000 right there. Minus that I know will be paid out. I'm trying to, I believe the health insurance is up to date. There shouldn't be any more payments there. Sorry, I'm just looking through. We have a number of carry forwards, like the assessor's revaluation will be carried forward. So those will probably amount potentially with the valuation being at 41,000 because we're in a reval year. We probably have at least 100,000 in carry forwards total.
In fiscal 22, we had 71.7.
Okay, so it might be less than that. But
Well,
I
it could be
think the
more too,
reval-
because
Yeah, the reval
Well,
is very high.
like I was gonna say, it might be more too, because some of those balances are higher
That's true, they are.
because we added another year to them.
Yeah.
So your 100,000 is probably a good number.
But that's, I would subtract another 50 or 60 just in people getting bills in that are they're just receiving in July for, you know, that for things they purchased in June. So I think that will continue. So I wouldn't anticipate more than 250,000, but that's a huge number.
Big number.
You wouldn't anticipate 250,000 under budget as a
Yeah.
final figure?
Potentially, because, you know, like when you have departments that are underspending by $15,000 and $20,000, I guess it could be that high.
So we're estimating a free
Might be.
cash number, right? Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
And while we're on that subject, how are we doing on revenue collections?
Extremely well.
Oh, so that's more.
We will see.
Yeah.
Becky, why wasn't the 16,000 spent on the independent audit? I thought we were doing audits every year, and so that sort of puzzled me. Maybe I missed it.
The audit is in process and hasn't been billed,
I see, okay.
so it will disappear when we pay the bill.
Okay, did.
Yeah, they were in for 2 partial weeks and then they're working on another, yeah, so it's not complete yet, but they were in here in end of May and June.
Who is on the Farm and Forestry Committee? I'm very unfamiliar with that committee. Is it active at all?
They do the market. And I am on the committee.
Oh,
We also have Bill Wells has been on the committee, but he hasn't, the only activities have been keeping the market going in the last number of years. And Kathy Carey, Deacon Bonner, Bill Wells, myself.
okay.
Robert Novick,
I'm sorry?
Bob Novick.
Oh, yes, he's on it too. but he didn't want to participate in the market. He has his own farm stand.
While we're at this, has anybody else had a chance to review Becky's most recently issued expense report? And are there any other questions, comments, concerns?
I noticed some expenses that I believe are complete came in lower. The vehicles, a few others. So I do.
I'm sorry,
see-
which one, Susie?
Oh, let me come to find my smiley faces here. Let's see, sanitary landfill number came in lower. The health insurance came in lower. There's something in the vehicles, I don't know which page that's on.
Yeah, the legal, I am so
Yeah.
happy that the legal came in
Mhm.
Yep,
First
lower.
time in years.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know the planning board is actively using it, working on new zoning, solar zoning.
Yeah, speaking of planning board, they came way under budget. I recall a lot of discussion on the need to increase their budget. But they ended up running well under budget.
That's because their increases were based on the potential permitting coming forward from industrial solar. And it did not come forward.
So we over budgeted them for next year.
Well, it could come forward next year
Oh, and that's true. All right.
because they're still making their way through the Concom NRAD process.
So there is still conversation about it.
Yeah. Susie, did you find the vehicle?
yeah, so it's on
Tracking.
page 10 and it looks like the three things that this is capital ones. The elementary roof came in at only 86% of what was expected. And
It's not finished billing.
it's not finished billing. Okay, I'll take that smiley face
Yeah.
off my page.
Well, these funds don't have a fiscal year cutoff.
Okay, okay. But the police vehicle, the fire chief vehicle came in lower than expected. And the police
He's
radar.
gonna still spend money on lights and decorating and
All right, okay,
something else. He's not done yet
Take
either.
that smiley face off.
yeah. Okay,
Anything else? Expense report, Rise.
May I ask, while we're on this on this page, have we engaged Becky, engineers or Baby Bob engineers for the roof analysis on the school? Has that started?
No, that has not started yet.
And how about the culvert? I noticed there's nothing going on down there.
As Jim pointed out, on Friday, they actually came and installed a new pole and completed on Monday, moving all the electrical wires away from the pole that is still there. That pole needs to be removed because that's exactly where they're going to be digging. And the communication wires have to be moved to the new pole. And then the project can start, but the start date is being held up because they would not commit to a date before this work by National Grid was complete. So, and now they've come, the scheduling us in at this point is problematic. And we're
So
trying.
you're saying it
trying
could
to
be
work
another
that.
year?
Hopefully not, but it could be, we're trying to get it in the fall still, starting the middle of October. We've got a 30-day conflict with them at this point. We're hoping to figure out how to meet. And if we don't, I'm looking at the possibility of a spring not filling back up on the normal schedule, but that would take Concom and Howie, the dam keeper's agreeable, but we would need to work it through the permitting authorities.
The MLP can move its fiber within 2 weeks. So we have to know, give us a deadline or something like that. So that's not a problem. The other thing is that it's going to be a lot less expensive since having reviewed the engineering for the culvert and how they're going to pump water around the existing culvert. Water levels are really low right now. We're in a semi drought or a full drought. So boy, it would be a good idea to get this project off the ground as soon as possible, at least from the standpoint of the costs that they're going to face, the construction folks, MAS construction. So I hope it moves along.
I'll
Me
hope
too.
that.
Yeah, Bob,
Wanted to ask a question about the grant proposal to the state for the school roof, whether we've heard anything on that.
There's a proposal of a date of, we're working on a date. MSBA is coming out in August, and if we're just trying to finalize a date for them, and we should have a clear update after they tour the site and speak with the education officials. And hopefully that's going to happen in the beginning of August.
Well,
They have to have an answer by October.
Well, in the meantime, we should be going forward, getting our own engineering set of it. So there's no reason why we shouldn't do that, is there?
Nope.
So I did provide the town with some referrals to some roofing engineers. We have 3 of them that we could engage. Have you been in touch with these people, or should we get in touch with these people? Toot Sweet?
I'm sorry, Bob. I'm not sure if I have your email, but I'll double check.
I've got 3 emails I sent you with 3 roofing engineers that were willing to give us a proposal. And then, so then that was put on hold to pending town meeting approval. We have the town meeting approval. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't go ahead and start the engineering process. This is a urgent situation. We should address it, don't you think?
I think the one issue at play, which is, the $60,000, yes, I think we need to move forward. It's just having a sense if this is if they're really gung ho and viable on August 1st, that the project is going to come through. Spending $60,000 on the engineering should be a decision made by some,
We already made the decision at town meeting, and listen, we were supposed to hear from them, and they said they were going to tell us in a couple weeks in May, in the middle of May. We heard that from them, and once again, we're just getting, this thing is dragging out. The reason that we proposed to do it ourselves is because it's been dragging out for years. So let's
But the
go.
engineering done now will put us at the same construction season, whether we do it now or if we do it in September or October.
You know very well.
Yeah,
Becky.
we will get it. I will get it going right away. And
Okay, well, let's get it going, because look at the culvert, look at the number of delays and unanticipated things that have come in to block us, and that is not critical. Obviously, in some respects, I'm happy we delayed it, because now we're gonna have a new culvert when we would have had one that was 3 years old. But still, the reason we're replacing it is because it's considered to be unsafe. So we should try to get this thing moving the best of our ability. We have to rely on a lot of other people, and I certainly don't feel comfortable relying on MSBA.
No,
so how are we leaving that as far as engineering? The engineering
That's-
piece?
I'll send you the emails, Becky. I'll get you that information.
Great,
I
thank
think that we have already had a vote at the approved at town meeting to do this.
to spend the
think we should
60,000,
proceed.
yep.
So I will send you that email tomorrow, okay?
Thank you.
Anything else on expenses or updates on projects? We're ready to move on.
Move on, move out.
Okay. There's a couple items up above that we missed out on. I don't know if we can all remember back to May. But we did have the info session. And so there's an agenda item here about, we were all part of that. We were all part of that session. Again, I'm not sure how much of us remember what, but any feedback or comments regarding the May 17th info session? 2 months ago. Oh, yeah, 2 months ago. That's a lot of memory ago.
A lot of water under the culvert.
Okay. All right. Well, if no one has comments there, what about regarding the annual town meeting that was several days later? Any inputs, comments regarding annual town meeting? Bob?
I'd like to make a comment directed to George and ask him how he could say that free cash was a checking account when we were having a discussion about an article, I don't remember the number of it, about the school roof. You said that the town uses that money to run its operations, and I think that's a false statement. I think that was a misleading thing to say, George. I don't know how you could say that.
Well, that's something we've heard from the treasurer and the town collector many, many times, in that the free cash funds are in the bank, and when they're in the general fund, so when bills are being paid and being processed, what's in the general fund is being spent, is being used. So for instance, if we have $1 million in free cash and it's July 12th and we have a big bill, let's say $500,000 that's due by the end of the month, the collections for the property taxes haven't occurred yet. Those don't happen until the end of July and August. So if we have a large free cash balance, then we have a lot of cash in the bank account, and that can be used to cover that bill. If we have zero free cash, then we really don't have a lot of cash in the bank account, certainly non-attributed free cash. We would have to borrow to pay that big bill. And that's something we've heard from the previous treasurer and we've heard from the town collector. In fact, I wish she was there because I know Ellen would have got up and said that, and she has at many meetings. So
I've
in her
heard,
absence, that's what I was referring to.
George, I really disagree with you. I think there is no way we can touch free cash and use it for general operating purposes. There's absolutely no way. It's illegal.
But
There's no way. You cannot touch that money. It's in a separate account.
I don't think it is. They're two separate conversations.
Look it up.
We
It's
have-
wrong.
Well, we should ask the treasurer.
Right.
It's absolutely forbidden to do that. You have to have a town meeting vote to touch that money. And after town meeting, it's locked up until it's certified.
But there's cash in the bank.
But
There's
that's
cash in
not
the
the
bank.
same. We have OPEB money and all kinds of things in the bank. We can't touch that money for operating
Special
expenses. No
funds.
way.
Free
Becky,
cash is different, Bob.
Well,
It sits in the chip-
I'd like us to look into this because I've done some homework and I'm pretty sure that I'm right now. I'm not always right, as you well know, but I think that was a false statement. I think it was misleading because free cash cannot be touched, and neither can the other reserves without a town meeting vote.
I made the statement because we've been told that in the past. And Bob, let's just get to the bottom of it and ask the treasurer how it works, and then we'll know. And if I made a mistake, I'll admit I made a mistake. But I'm telling you, that's what we've been told by Gail Volker, and that's what we've been told by Ellen McKay.
Well, look
They
into
use
it.
it as
George.
working capital.
We'll discuss this and we'll both look into it, okay?
Well, ask them. We should have them come to a meeting and just tell us all, because everybody in this committee should hear from them.
Okay, we've got an action here to reach out to the Talon. Would it be Talon?
No, treasurer.
Or you said the treasurer? Okay, so Ryan, we reach out to Ryan.
I think Becky knows better. I mean, who
Yeah.
would be the authority on this? Treasurer. Okay.
And Gabe, we could reach out to her too, and on a Zoom meeting, she could come on maybe.
But the reality is whoever's right, whoever manages the bank accounts, that's the treasurer, knows what's going on in those bank accounts, knows what's in them and know what they're being used for. So if the free cash balance is in the general fund and it's being used to pay bills or not, he's going to say, yes, George is right, or no, George is wrong.
Okay, Susie, I think you
I'm
have,
happy to be educated.
oops.
And I noticed that the short-term borrowing line was not spent out. So I think that's what George is referring to, but I'd like to hear it from the treasurer.
I don't think it's related.
Oh,
Well, it would be related if we didn't have working capital, Becky, because we had zero free cash. And then we'd have to borrow to cover that bill until the collections came.
right.
If we didn't have any free cash.
Yes.
So we'll find out.
Okay. Have we nailed that for the time being?
Mhm.
Okay. The next item I had on here is it is a new fiscal year, and put on here, Finance Committee meeting guiding principles, so guidelines for how we conduct ourselves as a committee for this upcoming fiscal year. I'm not sure if this is 8:30 now. I don't know if this is something we want to get into now, or is this something, AJ, you want to lead this topic during the next meeting?
Sure.
So we have really two options. We can start this process now. I think this should take some thinking on all of our parts.
Was
If
the
it
idea
hasn't
here,
already.
Jim,
I'm sorry, go ahead, AJ.
was the idea here that we would talk not so much about process, but about just kind of how we work together and how we communicate together? Was that the thinking behind this?
I think it could be some of each.
Okay.
It could be both of those.
Okay. Yeah, I would suggest we table this to our next meeting, just given.
Yeah, okay. If everybody's okay with that, maybe we just have an assignment. We think about this and
Yeah.
we all come prepared with inputs to support, like as AJ says, our process, as well as how we conduct ourselves as a committee. That seem fair?
Yep.
It works. I see nodding heads. Okay. Committee reports. Probably not a lot of committee activity over the last couple of months, I'm guessing, but does anyone have anything committee-wise? George, I think I saw you, and then I see Jim.
Well, we came to an agreement with the police chief on her salary for the next 3 years. I don't know if I can give you details at this point. Becky, can I give details at this point?
The select board has approved the contract. The contract has been signed.
Okay, so we approved a salary, her salary for the next 3 years. Her salary for FY23 will be less than what's in the budget. Personnel board, looking at how we calculate COLAs, we can pretty much expect that this year's inflation is going to be above the 4% cap that we have on each year. So 3% will be the pay increase for everybody for fiscal 24. Pretty much looks like that's a given. We will only need to raise the police chief's salary line in FY24 by 3% to cover the amount that we have for her. We've agreed for her in FY24. FY25, it would be, it's going to be a higher percentage. The personnel board, looking at salaries for police chiefs in Franklin County, offered her a number that was much lower than what others are being paid. Small town police chiefs in Franklin County are being paid. So we are giving her, her increases are higher than the 3%. She also has in her contract the opportunity to increase her salary based on credit, I can't think of the number, credits earned in getting a bachelor's degree, which she is very interested in doing. So there is a chance that those numbers I gave you, her salaries will actually be a little higher depending on when she achieves 2 separate milestones, if she does. But that's basically what happened. That's the cost impact of her new contract.
Okay. Jim, I think George, are you wrapped up? Are you finished or any?
Yeah, that's it. Personnel board hasn't met, I don't think, since annual town meeting.
Okay. Yeah,
Well,
Jim.
The good news is that it's raining outside right now, which is a sort of a miraculous event.
Yeah, not
Um,
enough.
Not enough, of course, but it's a good gesture. This is just a small note for all of you who are curious about these things. The switch over from Crocker to Sheld as our new ISP has been moved up to September 1st from August 1st. So you can all relax for at least a little bit. That was due to the fact that Crown Castle was unwilling to move up their schedule for arranging the 10 gigabit circuitry that supplies us with internet service until August 14th. And so we were stuck, and we have to use Crocker for another month, but all seems to be going well, and you'll hear more about it in the weeks to come.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Any other committee updates? Okay, I guess I have one. I think one of our last meetings, I was assigned to the fire chief, emergency chief search committee. And we started up and we had a number of meetings, and we ended up reviewing resumes and had an interview. I don't know, Becky, at this point, I think we made a recommendation to the select board. I think a decision was in the select board's hand as far as going forward with the recommended person, as well as there was some background checks and other types of things, routine things that needed to be wrapped up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is to be on the agenda for their next meeting on the 19th.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
they have not yet made a decision as these things are getting done.
yeah. Okay,
And the
so there's a
person
person out there.
recommended-
I'm
What?
sorry, go ahead, Becky.
I was just gonna say why don't you say who you recommended?
Yeah, Lenny Zawanka is who has come forward, who we have come forward with as recommending. He's the assistant chief right now, and he's actually the chief, and he's actually the acting chief right now. So that was the recommendation, and that's like I said, there's a background check and the routine checks that going on right now, and then there's the select board decision process that will happen, as Becky said, I guess a week from today.
Yeah.
Does that
He's a
sound right?
resident of our town?
Lenny is a longtime resident. He was born here. He's been on the fire department for 18 years. He's the ranking officer as a lieutenant and has been in the acting chief in charge since July 1st.
Right?
Okay. Do we have any other items to cover that are not on the agenda? Okay, if not that, what about scheduling our next meeting? Do we want to try to aim for, is there anybody see need for an additional meeting in July, or we look for something in August? Maybe the second week of August?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Plan.
Yeah,
I don't know if somebody has access to a calendar, or do we
I've
want to
got a
look at it?
I think the
calendar.
9th. The 9th
Ninth
of
is, the
August.
9th is a Tuesday?
Yeah. That's if the select board meets on the 2nd.
How does August 9th work for everybody?
Works for me.
Sure.
Okay, do we, the 6:30s like we did here, does that seem to fit best?
Like it?
Okay, so the August 9th, 6:30, our next meeting?
Got it.
All right,
Can do. I can do it. Okay.
So George and Bob, I'll put your names forward with the others to about the regional not curb cut, guardrail committee, and get back to you. share the information. I guess they have your emails anyway, so you'll probably hear from them directly once I give them your names. Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you for
One last
volunteering.
thing, Jim,
I'm sorry?
what about the Celtics?
Hey,
I'm
it was a good
pretty happy with
season.
the way, I'm pretty happy with the way the outcome.
Me
They
too,
gave us
me
a
too.
good, they gave us a good year.
They had one hell of a second half of the year. And they ran up against a team that was peaking.
Good night, Melody.
All
No,
right.
Oh,
He's got a
I thought you were
question.
saying good night.
Oh, sorry. No, I am not interested in this. That's true. But I just looked at my work calendar. I can't do the 9th. I'm sorry. I have a meeting that evening.
What does everybody think? Do we want to,
You can have it without me. That's fine.
stick with the 9th at 6:30 or do we want to try to work somewhere else, work separate?
I would have a problem if we went to the 16th,
Okay.
because I'm in Maine then. So I could do the 23rd. I don't know if people feel like that's waiting too long.
I don't think I can do the 23rd.
Oh, okay.
Second?
No, the second is a select board meeting, right?
Okay.
I
Wow.
apologize. I didn't catch that when we were first talking about it.
Yeah, okay, so do we want to stick with what we have here, August 9th?
Yeah,
At 6:30?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Jim, I'm gonna give
Thanks-
you,
Thanks for letting us know, Melody.
Jim, I'm gonna give you a call just because there's some details about like posting meetings and agenda building and stuff that I just want to ask you about. So,
Absolutely,
I'll give
absolutely.
you-
Feel
I'll give you a
free,
buzz.
whatever it takes, AJ.
Okay, sounds good.
Um,
Thanks.
Yep, and yeah, we can talk offline about whatever, a time and
Yeah.
date, and if it
That
takes a
sounds-
number of times, that's fine too.
Yeah, I'll shoot you an email with a couple of options.
Okay,
So Jim, any valedictory? Here,
a valid, what?
final going remarks, come on.
Yeah.
Closing remarks. It's been, no, really, I have enjoyed it. I have enjoyed doing this role, the last couple of years.
Thank
I think you've done a
There's
great
been a lot
job.
of, there's
Yeah,
been
we
a lot of
appreciate the job
challenges, and
you've done.
it's been interesting challenges, and I enjoy, the mix of diverse opinions on the team and the passion. It's been a good run. I've learned a lot from it, and I can't say I've enjoyed every minute, but it's been good. So I've enjoyed working with you all, and I'll continue enjoy working with you all. Is that what you're looking for, Bob?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. What are some final words?
Now, how about AJ? He's moving on from secretary.
Welcome to the hot seat.
Right.
Well, and we may also understand if we want to change any of the committee assignments. Like I'm happy to still do the school, but the rest of them we can talk about next time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe something to think about for the next meeting.
It might not be a bad idea.
If people have interest in joining and representing us on some of these other committees, or people are looking for the opposite, they're looking to move on from representing us on a committee. Yeah. Yep. Sounds good.
Go Celtics.
Have a
Yeah.
good evening.
That was fun.
Okay, now I'm gone.
They'll be fun next year too.
Well,
They're gonna be fun next year too, no question.
don't you work at Boston now,
Now,
Mel?
Bob, what about the Bruins?
You got to do the adjournment. thing
I'm
quick,
concerned
guys.
about the
Oh,
bees.
we can't leave here. We gotta adjourn.
Well, we
Red
gotta see
Sox.
what they, we gotta see what they do in the off
We're
season.
chasing them out of here, Jim. Come on.
Yeah, they're going the wrong way, Bob.
Okay, well,
Right,
good night,
guys.
all. Buenas.
No, we have to adjourn. Don't we have to have a
Yeah.
motion to adjourn?
Okay, motion to adjourn.
It's been a long
Second.
time since we met, but we still have to.
Arbonitis, aye.
Grove's eye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew eye.
Walton, aye.
I'm gonna go
Awesome.
watch the first place Yankees right now.
Oh,
See you
geez.
guys.
Oh, whoa, I'm out of here.
The battle cry.
Have a good one, everyone.
Good night.